man sagt, Routine sei beruhigend. Aber nichts an meiner Routine fühlte sich mehr beruhigend an, nicht seit meine Schwiegermutter Sylvia in mein Haus kam, als gehöre es ihr. Aaron, sagte sie eines Dienstagmorgens und öffnete sich mit dem Ersatzschlüssel, den ich Connor vor Monaten gesagt hatte, er solle ihn zurückbringen. Eine Frau in ihrem Alter sollte sich auf die Mutterschaft vorbereiten, nicht auf QuickBooks-Berichte. Sylvia war die Art von Frau, die ein Parfüm trug, das wie ein Urteil wirkte, dick, unverwechselbar und unmöglich zu ignorieren. Die ehemalige Schönheitskönigin, die zur Matriarchin der Wirtschaft wurde, glaubte an den äußeren Schein, die Abstammung und eine feste Hand am Esstisch. Leider wohnte sie nur 2 Straßen weiter, was bedeutete, dass sie jederzeit unangemeldet vorbeikommen konnte, was sie auch oft tat. Ich war 36, arbeitete Vollzeit als Buchhalterin bei einem regionalen Logistikunternehmen, war kinderlos, müde und, wie sich herausstellte, langsam aus meiner eigenen Ehe verschwunden. Sylvia schenkte sich Kaffee ein, als hätte ich ihn ihr angeboten. Sie beäugte die geöffneten Tabellen auf meinem Laptop und seufzte dann theatralisch. »Ich mache mir Sorgen«, sagte sie, als ob sie es ernst meinte. »Wer erbt die Firma, wenn es kein Baby gibt? Connor ist der einzige Erbe. Kein Kind bedeutet, dass die Linie der Familie Blake hier endet.« Ich unterdrückte ein Dutzend Antworten. Das Unternehmen war eine mittelgroße Transportkette, die von ihrem Mann Mason gegründet worden war. Sylvia sprach darüber, als wäre es das Römische Reich. Ich stand auf. »Ich habe in 20 Minuten ein Meeting. Schließen Sie ruhig hinter sich ab.« Sie hat sich nicht bewegt. »Sie sind seit 8 Jahren verheiratet. Versuchst du es überhaupt noch?« Ich antwortete nicht. Ich konnte nicht, denn die Wahrheit war, wir hatten es versucht. Wir hatten zusammen geweint, zusammen versagt, aber irgendwann gaben wir sogar die Hoffnung auf. Und jetzt war ich allein und kümmerte mich um den Haushalt, die Rechnungen, meinen Job und das, was früher eine Ehe gewesen war. Connor, mein Mann, war immer sanfter gewesen als seine Eltern. Mit 38 Jahren unterwarf er sich Sylvia immer noch wie ein Teenager, der beim Rauchen erwischt wurde. Früher dachte ich, das mache ihn nett. Jetzt frage ich mich, ob es ihn nur schwach macht. Er kam wieder spät nach Hause. Zuerst war es einmal pro Woche. Dann 2-mal. Dann 4 Nächte hintereinander. Kundenessen, murmelte er und zog seinen Mantel aus. Zuerst versuchte ich, ihm zu glauben. Dann kamen die Nächte, in denen er nicht essen wollte, was ich gekocht hatte. »Schon gegessen?« fragte ich einmal und versuchte, meine Stimme ruhig zu halten. Er sah nicht einmal auf. Hatte einen Burger mit den Jungs. »Du magst nicht mal Burger.« Schweigen. An diesem Abend fragte ich, ob wir ein Wochenende wegfahren könnten. Nur wir beide. Versucht, wieder Kontakt aufzunehmen. Er seufzte, als hätte ich ihn gebeten, eine Rakete zu bauen. »Vielleicht hätten wir dieses Problem nicht, wenn du meiner Mutter gegenüber weniger arrogant und mir mehr Aufmerksamkeit schenken würdest«, sagte er. Mir tat das Herz weh, als wäre ich gegen eine Glastür gelaufen. »Was für ein Problem«, flüsterte ich. Er antwortete nicht. Er ging einfach nach oben und schloss die Schlafzimmertür hinter sich. Ein paar Tage später fand ich einen bereits geöffneten Umschlag auf der Küchentheke. Ich habe nicht herumgeschnüffelt. Es war einfach da. Der Absender war Coastal Credit and Finance, und die Zusammenfassung darin ließ meine Hände kalt werden. Offener Betrag, $14.762,54. Es gab Einzelposten. Cartier-Armband. Spa World Platinum-Mitgliedschaft. Louis Vuitton. Mein Name stand nirgendwo, aber unsere Privatadresse. In derselben Nacht durchwühlte ich den Küchenmüll. Ich fand zerfetzte Quittungen. Ich klebte sie wie ein Tatortpuzzle zusammen. Alle stammten aus den letzten 6 Wochen. Auf einem stand die Rechnung für einen Seidenbademantel im Wert von $900, auf einem anderen für eine Paarmassage. Keines davon gehörte mir. Da fiel mir das Parfüm auf. Es war nicht meins. Ich hatte seit Monaten kein Parfüm mehr getragen. Doch der schwache, anhaltende Jasminduft auf Connors Hemden klebte wie ein Schuldgefühl an ihm. Ich stellte ihn nicht zur Rede. Noch nicht. Stattdessen habe ich angefangen, zuzusehen. Den Kilometerstand zu überprüfen. Ich machte Fotos von den Quittungen. Ich hob Kontoauszüge auf. Ich sagte mir, ich würde Beweise sammeln, aber in Wahrheit bereitete ich mich auf den Moment vor, in dem ich keine andere Wahl haben würde, als mich dem zu stellen, was ich bereits wusste. Dieser Moment kam um 2:34, 3 Wochen später. Der Klingelton durchdrang die Dunkelheit. Es war Connors Handy, das auf seinem Nachttisch vibrierte. Er war nicht zu Hause. Er sagte, er helfe bei einer Lagerhausprüfung in Cleveland. Die Nummer war mir unbekannt. Ich zögerte, dann nahm ich ab. Eine Frauenstimme antwortete, hoch und atemlos. Sind Sie Connors Frau? Ich setzte mich aufrecht hin. Ja. Wer ist das? Er ist zusammengebrochen. Im Hotel. Oh Gott. Er ist auf dem Platz. In der Innenstadt. They're taking him to St. Luke's Hospital. It's his heart. Please. He's critical. The line went dead. I threw on jeans over my pajamas, grabbed my keys, and drove through the night on autopilot, heart hammering so loud I thought I might pass out behind the wheel. The hospital smelt like bleach and cold metal. The nurse at the front desk didn't even flinch when I rushed in. Are you family? Wife, I managed, barely getting the word out. She nodded, like she'd seen it all before. Cardiac wing. Room 412. They just stabilized him. You'll want to prepare yourself. Prepare myself for what? I couldn't feel my legs. My mouth was dry. The hallway stretched ahead like a tunnel, sterile and endless, each fluorescent light overhead buzzing louder than the last. As I reached the turn toward his room, I slowed. And a woman was already standing outside room 412. She looked like she'd stepped out of a glossy magazine, tall, slender, barely out of college, with smooth blonde hair that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. Her black dress was designer. Her heels were the kind you don't wear unless you expect to be seen. And yet, she was trembling, clutching a Louis Vuitton handbag like a life preserver. Mascara streaked her cheeks. She looked wrecked. When her eyes met mine, she stiffened. You must be Aaron, she said. Her voice cracked on my name. Her hands shook. I stopped a few feet away, heart pounding. Who are you? She swallowed hard. I'm Harper. Connor and we were supposed to get married. The words hit me like a slap. He blinked. What did you just say? She stepped back, flustered. I didn't think you'd get here this fast. He texted me earlier, said his chest hurt, but he didn't want me to panic. I thought it was nothing. I stared at her, my mind trying to catch up. Young. Beautiful. Crying. Dressed like a grieving widow. Wearing his bracelet. The one I gave Connor for our 5th anniversary. And she was here first. In front of his door. Like she belonged there. I didn't speak to her again until hours later. Harper had disappeared into the ICU waiting room while I sat by Connor's side, numb and silent. The machines beeped steadily, the oxygen line hissed. His face was pale. His chest rose and fell like it was on borrowed time. The doctor told me it was a massive heart attack. They'd stabilized him, for now, but the damage was extensive. At some point, I became aware of Sylvia's perfume before I saw her. That familiar floral clout, thick and cloying, announced her presence. Where is he? She demanded as she stormed down the hallway, Mason, my father-in-law, following behind, grim-faced. I stood and pointed silently toward the room. She rushed in and gasped at the sight of her son. Then she turned sharply toward me. What happened? I wasn't there, I said quietly. Before she could fire off another accusation, the elevator doors opened again, and Harper stepped out. Sylvia turned. Her eyes scanned the girl from head to toe, and instead of shock or confusion, I saw something far worse. Recognition. "Oh my God," Sylvia whispered. "You must be Harper." Harper nodded, lips trembling, eyes wet. "I'm pregnant," she said softly, "with Connor's child." Mason inhaled sharply. Sylvia's reaction was not what I expected. She didn't slap her, didn't yell, didn't even look at me. Instead, she rushed forward and threw her arms around Harper like a long-lost daughter. "Oh, thank God," she cried. "I was so afraid our bloodline would end with him. You have no idea how long I've prayed for this." I stood there, frozen, as Harper collapsed into her arms like they were old friends. I wanted to scream. I wanted to vomit. But mostly, I wanted answers. Connor died 2 days later, just like that. He never woke up, never opened his eyes, never spoke another word to me. The doctor said his heart gave out during the night. Sylvia sobbed, Harper wailed, and I just stood there, empty. The man I married for 8 years had been living a double life, and now I had to plan his funeral, with his mistress in tow. "Include her," Sylvia said flatly as we met in the family room of the funeral home. "She's carrying his child. She's family." "She is not family," I replied. "She is now." Mason sat silently in the corner, rubbing his temples. "You want her to sit where?" "With us?" "Yes," Sylvia said, "front row." "And you expect me to host the service? Deliver the eulogy? Stand beside a woman I didn't know existed last week?" "She's carrying our future," Sylvia snapped. "Don't be petty." I nearly laughed. Petty? I was being asked to swallow betrayal, humiliation, and grief, and smile through it for the sake of appearance. But in the end, I agreed. Not because of them, but because of Mason. "She should do it," he said quietly. "Connor may have made mistakes, but this service should be done right. Aaron deserves that." And so I agreed. I regretted it the second the doors opened on the day of the funeral. The chapel was packed. Connor's casket stood at the front, draped in flowers. I stood next to it, numb and black. Then she arrived. Harper wearing a fitted black dress, pierced, soft waves in her hair, and that same Louis Vuitton bag on her arm. She looked like a senator's widow. And when people turned to look at her, she smiled. Smiled. Sylvia ushered her up front like royalty. "This is Harper," she said proudly to anyone within earshot. "She's family now. She's carrying my grandchild." I could feel the whispers starting behind me. I could feel my parents' discomfort. My sister-in-law looked at me in pity. No one had told them who this woman was, but they understood enough. I kept my head high. I read the eulogy. I held the line. Until Harper opened her mouth. It was during the post-service reception in the adjoining hall. I was standing near the coffee table, answering some awkward condolences from distant cousins when I heard Harper raise her voice. "She deserved it," she said. "I mean, 8 years and nothing? No kids, no legacy, no spark. She was just a placeholder." The room quieted. I turned. She was talking to 2 women I didn't recognize, laughing, tossing her hair. "She couldn't even keep his attention," Harper added. "Maybe if she wasn't a barren little failure, none of this would have happened." I felt the blood drain from my face. But that wasn't the worst part. Sylvia appeared beside her and laid a hand on her shoulder. "You had 8 years, Aaron," she said to me, loud enough for everyone to hear. "And nothing. Maybe Connor just needed a real woman." People gasped. Someone dropped a glass. The room buzzed like a hornet's nest. I opened my mouth to speak, but I couldn't find air. My knees trembled. End 10. I think it's time someone told the truth about Harper Vance. All heads turned. Standing in the doorway was my brother Dylan, former police officer, veteran, the only man in my life who had never once failed to protect me. His jaw was tight, his eyes locked on Harper, and he wasn't smiling. Dylan stepped forward, calm and deliberate. The room went deathly quiet. Harper's eyes widened, her fake grief twisting into something closer to panic. "I knew you looked familiar," he said, stopping just a few feet from her. "But it wasn't until I made a call this morning that it clicked." Harper stiffened. "My friend TJ sends his regards," Dylan added. Her face drained of color. He blinked. "Enthüllt?" Dylan glanced at me, then returned his eyes to her. "Her husband, Aaron. His real name's Thomas Jameson. Former Army. Moved to Denver 3 years ago. Married Harper Vance shortly after people around us started murmuring." Mason stood. Sylvia's hand dropped from Harper's arm. "Don't listen to him," Harper said quickly. "I left him. We're separated. It's complicated." "No, it's not," Dylan interrupted coldly. "You disappeared with his money, cleared out his savings, filed no divorce papers, and started playing fiancé to a man who already had a wife." I felt something inside me start to lift. Dylan turned to the stunned crowd. "This woman isn't Connor's widow. She's still legally married. Everything she's claiming is a lie." Then, as if on cue, the back doors opened. And in walked a tall man in jeans and a brown leather jacket. "Enthüllt?" I breathed. "Harper." The man barked. She actually flinched. He strode down the aisle like he was walking into a courtroom. "What the hell are you wearing? Whose funeral is this?" She started backing away. "Enthüllt, I told you." He held up his phone and played a voice recording. It was grainy, but her voice was unmistakable. "I faked the pregnancy. I just wanted to slice his money. His family's loaded. Once he's gone, I'll say the baby's his. By the time they figure it out. Too late." A woman in the back gasped. Sylvia staggered into her chair. "You lied about being pregnant?" I asked, my voice shaking. Harper's mouth opened and closed. "You tried to bury me at my husband's funeral," I whispered. "With a story you built out of garbage." TJ stepped forward, pulled out a folded document, and slapped it on the table beside the condolence book. "Divorce papers. Already signed by me. All we need now is your signature and a few witnesses. Anyone here care to oblige?" People practically tripped over each other to get closer. Harper's hands trembled as she scribbled her name, her glamour unraveling by the second. The moment the pen left the page, she bolted toward the door. But Dylan stepped in her way. "You stole from a veteran," he said flatly, "and committed fraud across state lines. You think we're letting you walk out of here?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out his badge. "Expired, but still real. I made a few more calls this morning too. You'll be getting visitors." Harper looked around. No one came to her defense. Not even Sylvia. She turned wide-eyed and fled down the hall, heels clicking like a gavel. The aftermath was quiet. Embarrassed silence hung in the air like smoke. Sylvia sat like a statue. I thought she'd blame me. Scream, lash out. Instead, she whispered, I was wrong. About everything. It didn't bring me satisfaction. Not yet. But it was a start. Mason came to me later and placed a warm, heavy hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry, Aaron, he said quietly. You didn't deserve this. No, I said. But I survived ET, and that, somehow, meant more than winning. A few weeks passed. The chaos died down. I went back to work. I stopped checking the mailbox with dread. I slept through the night for the first time in months. Then one morning, I couldn't keep down my coffee. I brushed it off. Stress, I told myself. Until it happened again. And again. Just to be safe, I stopped at the pharmacy. Took the test in the office bathroom. 2 lines. 2. I sat there on the closed toilet, gripping the edge of the sink like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. I drove straight to my doctor. Blood test. Confirmation. Numbers. She smiled at me kindly. Congratulations, Aaron. You're pregnant. I walked out into the sunlight with a hand on my stomach and a strange sense of weightlessness. After all that pain. After the betrayal. The humiliation. The death. The lies. After Harper's act. After Sylvia's cruelty. After Connor's silence. There it was. A heartbeat. Not Connor's. Meine. And something else. Something small. And growing. And finally mine. I sat in the car, stared out the windshield, and whispered to no one. He never gave me peace. Or love. Or safety. Aber vielleicht das. Vielleicht ist dieses Kind das einzige wahre Geschenk, das Connor jemals hinterlassen hat. Und zum ersten Mal seit langer Zeit lächelte ich.